Mga balitang sigurado, tapat na serbisyo, at mga komentaryong numero 1. Yan ang hatid sa inyo ng himpilang may todong lakas. DWIZ 882.
Kamusta ka naman? How's life? Or rather, how's your love life? Iniwan ka na ba? Na-ghost? O as a friend? Bakit ikaw pa? If it's not you, is it me? Kaya mo bang mabuhay kung wala siya? Ang sakit naman, bes.
Kaya't halina't makinig, makichika, at maki-real talk sa inyong Sabado Hugot ng Bayan. Kasama ang inyong Kuyas Next Door, sina Kuya RV
At Kuya RA.
Dito sa Love Lines, Voice of the Heart. Ikaw, anong hugot mo sa buhay?
Yes, good evening mga kahugot! Yon. Wala yung ano ko dito console ko Anyways, magandang gabi po sa inyo lahat. And welcome again to another episode ng Voice of the Heart. Love Lines, Voice of the Heart. Yan. And just to remind you guys, ito po ay sa pakikipagtulungan ng Certified Voice Artist Program, Voice Acting Academy Philippines, Meta Voices Talent Casting Agency, Dubbing Booth Company, Creative Sound Studios at ng Voice of the Youth Network. Yan. And ito hinatid sa inyo ng DWIZ 882 at ng Creative Voices Production. Siyempre sa pakikipagtulungan niya na nag-iisang voice master ng Pilipinas, walang iba kundi si Sir Pochola de Leon Gonzalez. Yan, ako muli ang inyong voice friend, ang host ninyo ngayong gabing ito. Walang iba of course si Kuya RV. And well, unfortunately, wala po ngayon ang aking partner. Hindi po natin siya kasama, si Kuya RA, since siya po ay may ginagawang napaka-importanteng bagay. Pero syempre, hindi naman po mabubuo ang Love Lines kung wala ang dalawang naggagandahang dalagita ng ating show gabi every Saturday. Of course, nandyan si Ate Jari and si Ate Sophie.
Hello. Yung camera ko nasaan naman? Dali lang po, ayusin ko lang.
Hi everyone! Anyway, antabayanan bukas, araw ng Linggo, Abril 3, ang muling pagsasahimpapawid ng himpilang may todong lakas, DWIZ 882, sa pagpapatuloy ng Pilipinas Debates 2022. Kapartner ang COMELEC, Vote Pilipinas at CNN Philippines. Panibagong bugso ng paglalatag ng mga reforma, pagtugon sa mga malalaking usapin at pakikipagpalitan ng mga opinyon at saloobin hingil sa mga pambansang issue. Tutukan muli mula mismo sa mga tumatakbong Pangulo ng Pilipinas. Abangan Pilipinas Debates 2022, The Turning Point. Bukas, Linggo, Abril 3, simula alas 7 ng gabi. Makakasama natin si Drew Nasino, gayon din sina DWIZ reporters Jopel Peleño at Tina Nolasco at buong puwersa ng DWIC. Pilipinas Debates 2022, The Turning Point. Live sa himpilang may todong lakas, DWIC 882, at mga kapatid na himpilang DWIC at home radio sa iba't ibang panig ng bansa.
Yay! Thank you, Ate Sophie! Grabe, napakahaba nun. Sabi ko, hindi ko kaya basahin to. Joke lang. And of course, kasama natin sa studio, kasama din ang isang magandang dalagita dito. Sino siya?
Wala to, ako lang to. Wala to guys, ako lang to. Ano po si Ate Jari, ang inyong jolly girl.
Jari.
Yay!
Yun.
Jolly!
So maraming salamat for joining me this evening, no? Kung dahil nga hindi makakasama sa atin si Kuya RA, kaya napaka swerte ko na hindi ako nag-iisa. Sana all. Joke lang. Ayan. So, last week, no, pinag-usapan natin ay before pala yun, meron dito sa prompter ko nakalagay dito. Batiin lang natin ng happy birthday si Attorney Lorna Kapunan. Laban para sa karapatan yan, host. And si Miss Ariam Sancho, ang ating DWIC writer. Yan, maraming salamat and happy birthday.
Happy birthday!
Happy
Sana
birthday
masarap
po
po ang
sa inyo.
handa ninyo.
Yes!
Hi!
Sana naman yung handa nakakarating din dito sa loob ng booth. Kung hindi man, pwede po namin daanan dyan sa likod. Ayun, so last week, no, we were talking about depression, ladies, no? Pinag-usapan natin ang depression.
Totoo.
Diyos ko, na nakausap natin si Kuya Rainier dito and nasabi niya na siya isang psychologist at nabanggit niya na napakahalaga at napakaseryosong bagay pero hindi rin natin yung ipagkakaila na nanonormalize na kasi ang salitang depression. So last week, binigyan niya tayo ng specifics. Ano ba talaga or paano ba nating malalaman kung ang tao ay isang taong nade-depress na at ano ba ang mga kailangan nating gawin. Ngayon, simula nung Saturday na yun, kamusta naman yung mga araw ninyo? Kayo ba'y dumaan din sa pagninilay-nilay at inassess nyo rin ang inyong mga sarili?
Yes, feeling ko
Ang bilis nung yes. Ano yes?
Kasi nga, di ba, unang tanong mo pa lang sa kanya nun, talaga namang bumugso na.
Oo nga,
Ang damdamin
grabe.
ni Ate Sophie.
Alam mo, nakalimutan ko yan ha. Nung tinanong ko siya, nga pala, sabi ko, Diyos ko, kala.
feeling ko kailangan ko magpa-evaluate.
Uy, may free
Charot
naman
lang.
yan, no?
Free, oo. We have organizations naman daw yan ha, para din sa mga nakikinig at hindi nakahabol last week. For those who are undergoing depression or things na parang gusto nyong ayusin sa buhay ninyo, meron tayong mga centers na pwedeng tumulong sa inyo for free. So,
Yes.
huwag nyong alalahanin. So, yun nga, Ate Sophie, sinasabi mo kanina.
Sabi ko, okay naman ako. Actually, this whole week, it's just that busy talaga. Tapos midterm week namin this week. I mean, this coming week.
Good luck. Good luck, no?
Thank
God
you.
bless, ng malala.
Ano malala? Kaya dapat pakabait ka para meron kang Cristo points.
Manifesting.
Dapat. Sabihin mo, i-claim mo, napapasa ka. Yan yung sinabi sa amin before eh. Pag nagre-review center kami, sinisigaw na, it's raining license. Tapos sisigaw kami, it's mine. Yan, ganun dapat.
Kasi i-attract mo daw.
Yes,
kung ano
it's
yung
true.
iisip mo.
Ikaw naman, Ate Jari, how were you last week since the topic of this depression?
Ayun, bisi-bisihan.
Ganisi yan.
Parang, buti nga nakasurvive ako ngayong linggo na ito. Diyos ko, parang kanina pa nga lang.
Pagod na nga, girl.
Oh, hindi naman halatang pagod ako, di ba? Hindi naman halatang rumakit pa ako.
Lagi ka naman maganda.
Oo nga.
naman, yes.
Parang kahit pagod, kahit
Oo.
puyat, kahit walang tulog, kahit
Yes,
ano.
kahit wala kang jowa, ang mahalaga maganda ka.
Yes.
Patay tayo.
Ikaw naman, Kuya
mukhang
RD.
kailangan ng next week ang usapan, jowa. Ako, okay naman ako since the topic of depression. Sabi ko nga, everyone's going through different struggles, challenges, roadblocks sa buhay nila. No? We go through everything. It's just a matter of really acknowledging and assessing yourself and trying to look at the better picture of why things are happening. Sabi ko nga, hindi sinasabi ko sa isang show ko, no? Things actually happen not to us, but it happens for us.
Yes.
Hindi nangyayari sa atin ng mga bagay-bagay, nang nangyayari para sa atin yung mga yan. So the sooner that we realize, the better things would be for us. No? So pansin nyo, I'm kind of speaking in English
Yes.
right now. 'Cause,
Opening dollars.
yeah.
Nag-warm up yarn.
Oh my gosh. Anyways, I'm trying to... No.
Hindi pa na ng accent.
No. I'm actually trying to catch up with my English accent because parang may kilala akong ganung host. Because hindi kasi tonight, guys, no, we have two very, very important guests for this evening. And if you would remember, probably 2 weeks ago, probably 2 weeks ago,
Sanay na ganyan. Ayusin mo nga.
probably 2 weeks ago, napag-usapan na natin ang VAUC or 3 weeks ago probably, VAUC or Violence Against Women and Children. Now, itong dalawang guest kasi natin would help us understand naman itong topic about alienation. No?
Yan ba ang invasion?
Hindi naman.
Outer space.
Outer
Kukunin
space
na ba?
invasion ba ito?
Lilipat na tayong Mars?
Diyos ko. Pero don't worry, later on they will be telling us more about what this alienation is all about because nangyayari to, it happens here in the Philippines, no? And don't worry, guys, kasi nga the guests that we have for this evening are actually offshore, nasa ibang bansa sila.
Yes.
Okay, they are actually offshore.
Love Lines International.
Yes.
Yeah.
My God.
Worldwide.
Yes.
So todong lakas, no? And They're actually located offshore. And later on, syempre, may mga nakikinig naman tayo dyan sa radyo ngayon, mga drivers natin na nakikinig sa atin sa Facebook page natin. Don't worry, nandito naman kami po ni Ate Sophie at ni Ate Jari to help translate whatever po ang mapag-uusapan namin.
Oo, no.
Because
Yes.
nangyayari kasi to eh. It happens. Nangyayari kasi to.
Nangyari na sa'yo?
No.
Wala pa siyang Junakis.
Wala naman ako Junakis. Huwag ka magalala.
Soon.
So, nangyayari kasi ito sa atin sa Pilipinas, and sa kakapanood ko rin sa Facebook, sa YouTube nung nakakailang million subscribers na, kung alam niyo po yung Sumbungan ng Bayan, yan.
Okay.
Yung Sumbungan ng Bayan na nakikita ko laging nagagamit yan. I mean, it's very common for a family or probably a husband or wife na hindi nagsettle together. That they would normally abuse yung parenting authority nila dun sa children just so that they could get as much as they can from the other partner or dun sa asawang lalaki or sa babae. Parang ganon. And common to sa Pilipinas. And for sure, you guys makaka-relate kayo. Yung mga nakikinig, hindi kayo. Yung mga nakikinig, yung makaka-relate kayo dyan. So, without further ado, I would like to introduce two of our guests for this evening. Wala si Kuya R.A. Napalitan naman tayo ng dalawa. So, two of our guests for this evening are actually part of Split the Difference UK. We have here live on Zoom the legal head, attorney Arpu Kumar, and the CEO, Miss Sally Ann Burris. Good evening.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, right?
Hi.
Good afternoon. And you guys in the UK right now, right?
Yes.
Yes. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, attorney and Miss Sally. How are you guys doing for this evening? This afternoon.
We're very excited to be here with you.
No, my gosh, that's a very strong English accent I'm hearing right now. Don't worry. No. My gosh. Anyways, don't worry. I've actually brought a dictionary here with me just in case that I'll be lost for words. No, I'm just kidding. So, Miss Sally and Attorney Arpu, this is a usual question, by the way, that we ask our guest, whoever attends our studio, live studio here in the DWIZ. We just want to know, how is your heart?
Do you want me to go first?
Sure.
My heart's feeling really good.
Oh, that's good. Feeling really good. And how about you, Attorney Arpu?
I'm delighted.
Oh, you're delighted. That's a good sign.
Yes.
That is a good sign. So let's keep it that way. So, Attorney Arpu and Miss Sally, as I've mentioned earlier to our Filipino viewers and listeners, that unless you guys speak in Tagalog, do you know any Filipino words?
No.
No. Okay.
Oh, that's perfectly fine.
Don't worry, I brought here with me a liter of water just in case it would be hard for me to. No, just kidding. So
Maybe you should have brought a handkerchief also
or a tissue.
for your nosebleed.
No, don't worry. As I was saying earlier, for the sake of our listeners, Filipino listeners, if there might be any questions or answers that you might be giving us, we will be translating it in Filipino later on, just so that they could catch up with everything. But for sure, majority of our listeners would understand as well. So
Yes.
you guys are ready to go through this, right? So, Miss Sally and Attorney Arpu, because you guys are both under Split the Difference UK, right? Can you tell us more about Split the Difference UK? What's your advocacy? What's this all about, so that our listeners would actually have an idea?
Okay, so I'll start. I am the founder of Split the Difference. Split the Difference is designed to support parity and equity in services for men and boys. The reason men and boys don't have that is because legislation, guidance, policy, it doesn't recognise that they have needs. And unfortunately, as a result of that, after 5 years, we're going into year 6 now actually, after 6 years research in the UK and internationally, we feel there's nothing else that we can do really, except for to be standing up and be counted and say this is wrong. So we do this in a way by advocating that laws are changed. So we don't deliver frontline services, we work with them in partnership with them, but the way that we work is to campaign that laws are changed.
Nice. That's really nice. I love the advocacy of trying to give men an equal right. I mean, showing them the equal rights that they have. Because normally, I mean, especially here in the Philippines, men doesn't know much about our rights as men. Because our law are pretty much strong in terms of magnifying the laws of the female society. That's the thing. But do you guys have any satellite office here in the Philippines?
We are looking to set up. We've got partnerships that we work with all over the world, but we're looking to set up a committee in the Philippines. The idea is that we work in partnership with that committee then to ask legislation to make changes. Unfortunately, men don't understand that they don't have equality until they're faced with things like family court, divorce, maybe domestic abuse or some form of abuse, and then they realise that services are not available to them as they are, unfortunately, for women and girls. So, yes.
That's a good thing to know because, again, as I've mentioned, I mean, just to translate in Tagalog or in Filipino, maganda to kasi yung mga lalaki here in the Philippines, hindi nila alam nga talaga na nasa disadvantage tayo in terms of the laws that we have.
Actually, there's a House bill already for men. House Bill 4888, like for the anti-domestic violence. Well, if it will be passed as a law, then it will kind of like an support to the present law for the violence against women and children.
And it's good because, again, sabi ko nga kanina na dahil nga hindi nagiging balance or the men doesn't know that they have this rights unless that they are actually facing a certain situation that in court or they're actually pressed against the wall that our men doesn't know our rights primarily. Kaya,
maybe because we do not have divorce here.
That's another thing as well, yes. Kaya hindi rin natin na-entertain. That's why we don't entertain much or try to know more about the laws. I mean, actually, who knows our rights and our actually laws here in the Philippines unless you are actually faced to know one, diba? So that's a problem. So we really admire this advocacy of Split the Difference UK, and it's glad to know that
they're gonna have a committee here in the Philippines
soon, and that's really something to look forward to. So, Miss Sally or Attorney Arpu, I mean, whoever can answer this, because if I'm not mistaken, you guys are here right now with us to explain what alienation is all about, what's really going on in this topic. Can anyone, anyone of you tell us more, elaborate what this alienation is all about?
Parental alienation.
Parental alienation, to be exact. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Arpu, would you like to answer this one?
Yeah, Miss Attorney Arpu.
We may have a connection issue. I'm not seeing her at the moment on the camera, so there may be an issue. So maybe I should answer this for you. Okay, so alienation comes in many formats. First of all, in a relationship, when we go into a relationship and we look for love and we've got all these dreams, we build that relationship based on hopes, based on being able to, work together on those dreams. And you'll be guided by, I'm going to get married, I'm going to have children, I'm going to buy a car, I'm going to develop my work, I'm going to become a great human being with lots of kids around me and grandchildren. And when a relationship breaks down, the narrative of that becomes hurt and harmed by lots of sorrow, sadness. It's like mourning the death of something or someone. When we lose a parent or, a child, God forbid, we mourn that, and a relationship is exactly the same. And unfortunately, for a lot of people, the children become the central point of that relationship and that breakdown. And there becomes this battle about, for men, we notice that, and we're looking at doing some research on this, but for men, we notice when they start to understand that the law is not favouring them, what happens is they go on the defensive, so they're fearful, so arguments start about seeing children. With the women, they're worried that the men are not going to carry on supporting them, so there's lots of uneasiness around that, and the alienation can start within that family unit by simply sharing the arguments with children. Now, when that goes into a court setting, there are certain legislation in place for women that is not the same for men, that allows women to take the first steps into court and be protected by that court system. So, for example, there's funding available through court systems for women who are experiencing domestic abuse, and there's services around that court system that will help a woman who is experiencing domestic abuse. So they are pushed into an environment where there's lots of people there, there's often financial backing there. They can work through that system, and pretty much the system itself pulls the children away from the father. Now, for a father, unfortunately, this system helps with we know there are absolutely massive amount of false allegations that are put within this system. So often dads are in a situation where they've been arrested, they've been told they can't go near, there's injunctions placed upon them, and the system itself will then contribute to the alienation. Mm-hmm. We've looked at our directive is to face the United Nations. And we've looked at over 15 countries and their legislation within them. Not in one country was the legislation, the guidance, or the services around the breakup of families anywhere fair for a man or his children. And so you go from being a family that's in, they're upset, they're going through an awful thing, they're having to let go of their hopes and their dreams, the grandparents are involved, cousins are involved, everybody's involved in this, there's money involved, houses, cars. So the family are going through that, but then you've got an extended service, a family court service, or all of the services around that are also alienating children from their parents. And it becomes a quagmire. And children often, they can go, the minimum time a child will go through a family court process is between 9 and 18 months. Some families go through this process until the children are adults, and sometimes that's 12, 13 years. And that in itself is criminal. It's something that should never happen. Sorry, Arpu.
Well, as Sally rightly said about the imbalance in the legislation so far, men and boys are concerned, starting from the time a boy is born to the time he becomes a parent, and then, the custody battles and all the stuff that a person might go through when he or she is placed in unfortunate circumstances. Our research through Split the Difference has shown us that there is not even a single piece of legislation that will look into exclusive needs of men and boys, like we have women and girls' rights taken care of, whether it is a convention on elimination of domestic violence, whether it is Istanbul Convention, which I'm sure not many audience be familiar with. We can talk on Istanbul Convention because it has a massive impact on how global policies that support women's and girls' rights are being shaped up, and how politicians across the globe are pushing forward such policies. So I have been reading about Philippines and the politics in that country, for a few weeks now. So what I've found is it's no different than India, no different than England, no different than any other place where there are massive pieces of legislation covering women, protecting them from domestic abuse and violence, and also ensuring that women as victims are taken care of, leaving men as victims. And the only narrative which is most popular and most famous, which is, I think, a global narrative now, is that men are perpetrators and women are victims. Other day, Zen, who represents Men Courage Philippines, I and Zen, we are friends, and we've been talking about, certain flexes that we see all across the Wales, across the UK, and she was telling me about what she sees in Philippines, especially around Manila. She says there are so many flexes which are, directly pointing out that men are perpetrators perpetrators and women are victims. So I did some research on legislation, and I found out in 2019 the Anti-Violence Against Women and Their Children Act of 2004 was proposed with an amendment in Philippine Parliament, whereby they wanted to add men as victims as well, so that men who suffer from domestic abuse and violence are also covered by the legislation. Because as the name suggests, in Philippines, it only covers women and children. So then it made me go into the family code, which is in place in Philippines to ensure that custodial battles are taken care of and how women and children's rights are protected. It's a massive piece of legislation spanning over 200 plus articles, and all I could see was there is nothing that actually covers a man so far as the custodial battles are concerned. A man, in all cases, we can go deep into that as we progress in the show, but all I could find in a summary, I can say that a man has to prove his worth to be the father of the child, having custody of the child in the court, if he wants to have the physical custody of the child. Otherwise, law in Philippines explicitly guarantees that a mother has to have the custody of the child. So I can look at the international pieces of legislation, compare it with India, compare it with UK, and then come back to Philippines as we progress in the show. But it is how it is. There is this imbalance in law for men and boys as compared to women and girls, and it is unfortunate. That's where Split the Difference, that's where Men Courage Philippines, these organizations come forward. And we thank you for having us here today.
Yes, and we really, really thank you for finding the time. I know that this is part of your advocacy, but we really appreciate you joining us for this afternoon in your place to explain further what parental alienation and Split the Difference UK actually does for so many years now. And it's true, totoo naman. No one is above the law. Right? No one's above the law, and in Filipino we say it, walang nakahihigit sa batas ng Pilipinas, no? However, because of how the law was written way back before, majority, I mean, at least it's somewhat biased in terms of the custody of the child, that normally it actually goes to the mother. And
Yes,
men would
until
actually
7 years old.
until 7 years old, yes. And men should actually fight for their right to at least claim custody of their child. Or yun nga, kailangan paglaban mo pa.
Yes,
And it's really
like what Attorney Arpu Kumar
True.
said, the man has to prove his worth of taking care of the child.
when in fact both of them are actually just the parents of the child, and both of them are actually human beings. So what makes a woman, not to demean the girls, no, but what difference what differs men from women when in fact they are just both the parents of the child?
That's the point. There's an imbalances in legislative laws, that are protecting women.
And this is something that I've also, had a discussion with one of my friends. I'm sorry, because normally when you guys get married, you guys are happy and everything. We all think that just getting married, everything's gonna be happily ever after. That's what we normally say, right? But apparently, when we go through this kind of part of the relationship where you need to go through annulment or divorce, everything just gets so dirty when it comes to court.
Yes.
And complicated.
And
Yes, challenging for the both parties also.
And always, all the time, the child would always be the victim here. And that's something that, probably the Philippines should also check on, because earlier you mentioned that they are actually reforming something, right?
With the House Bill. And
the House
they're
Bill.
really waiting for it to be passed as a law.
Okay.
And also, like what Attorney Arpu Kumar said, it's very important for politicians to know about this kind of issues. Especially now, it is election in the Philippines, so you might as well take down note of this, that men are having not having no equality at all.
Tagalogin, let me just translate that in Filipino for other listeners, na kailangan talaga natin na maasiayos yung batas na yun. Kasi laging pabor na lang sa girls, sa women, yung law na meron tayo, when in fact, dapat men and women should share the same rights in terms of the custody of the child. But most of the time nga, napupunta lagi or mas pabor dun sa babae simply because of the law, kung how it was created way back before, no?
Sabi nga nila, a bad spouse is not a bad parent. So,
Yes.
nagkaroon man ng problema sa relasyon ninyo, it doesn't mean na hindi kayo mabuting magulang.
And there's a stereotyping like sabi nga ulit ni Attorney Arpu, of all the articles that she saw sa vowsy natin is walang victim na men, puro women. There's a
Why?
stereotype because it's very popular and famous na women lagi ang victim. When in fact, there are men out there that are experiencing abuse, domestic abuse, not only women.
And it has been rising recently. I mean, the numbers of men who are actually being abused, probably because women, or again, other women take advantage of the law that they know about that
And they
covers them,
have-
protects them, right?
Yes.
Kampante.
Yes. So, Attorney Arpu, if I may ask, what are the common cases that you've probably handled regarding this parental alienation? What are the common cases that you have seen so far?
The common cases pertain to like men fighting for the custody of their children, because under family law, generally what happens is that like under family code section 213 of Philippine law, we have this provision which is a default setting in family law in Philippines, that a child under the 7 years of age will be residing with his mother. And the law is pretty much direct in case of illegitimate children in Philippines, which means that if children are born out of wedlock, then the custody of that illegitimate child. I do not even feel like using this term, but you know, and that's legal term we use when we
term.
yeah. So the custody of those illegitimate children will be with the mother until and unless the father of the child proves serious lapses in the health of that lady, say like substance abuse, drug addiction, infidelity, or anything. I mean, it has to be proved beyond reasonable doubt by the man that the woman is unfit to take care of the child. Otherwise, this is one of those stringent positions under international law. When I do a comparative study of UK, Scotland, India, some African countries, that Philippine law is quite strict in the sense that generally a custody of a 7-year-old child or below that age will be with the mother. And there is second position where it says that any child who is 7 years plus, which is above the age of 7 years, that child's views will be taken in consideration as to where he wants to live. Like, you know, which parent he wants to live with. So now, with regards to the specific question of parental alienation, I would just like to mention there is one strain which is very common across all countries and pertaining to family law. This default setting of best interest of child is more inclined to giving custody of the child to women everywhere, whether it is India, whether it is UK or Wales or Scotland. These are basically devolved administrations which form the part of United Kingdom. So all the cases show this as a common factor, that anywhere where a father wants custody of his children, he has to prove in the family court when he is part of the custody battle that he is capable of looking after his children as a father. And then there is law in place. For example, the legislations in Philippines have different names in England, and they're different everywhere, you see. But the point is, let's say family law, then domestic violence and abuse legislations. All these legislations with certain sections, guarantee that the custody of the child will actually be with the mother. The father will only act as a banking, or an
Support.
Financial support.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's like, the father will act like a money bank because he has to give custody to the mother. Now he has to give maintenance to the wife because they've been married, Yes. Then double punishment will be on top of paying maintenance to the wife minus custody of the child. The parent, which is father, he will have to pay for the maintenance of the children as well. Now the catch is, the court says, you are the father, considering fairness of law, we give you rights, which are visitation rights. You have access to see your children or have an arrangement to have your children, say like on the weekends, depending upon the order court has made. But, in execution, I always say law is different in theory and in legislation. In practice, there is no synchronization. Law is totally different when you read it. When you practice it, it's totally different. So in my practice, I have seen that, whether it was in India, whether through Split, that we are doing advocacy to protect the rights of fathers struggling with custody battles at the moment. So they have no access to their children. I have received personal messages on Twitter asking my help, from alienated fathers. I've received those messages. They want to get some help from Split the Difference, that we enable even one call with their estranged children, because mothers, they manipulate children, and parents, especially fathers and men and boys, they don't realize that their rights are being violated. A man will focus on providing for his family. A man will focus on taking care of the best interests of his child more than the court or the wife would. And in some cases, I have personally seen men will just move away from the matrimonial house, leaving it to the discretion of the wife and the children to take care of it. And then he becomes so alienated in this process from his children that there is practically no contact, no emotional, physical, or any communication contact between the father and the child. Sally wants to add on to what I'm already saying.
Yes, Sally.
So, yeah.
Yeah, if you don't mind, because one of the things that we notice is there's no validation in men parenting their children. And there's a lack of understanding on the psychology, actually what happens to men and women when they become parents, physically, mentally, and emotionally. What we know now is that women, the voice of the woman is, I carry my child, my body changes, the hormone changes, everything changes about who I am. But what we know through science now, through neuroscience, through over 10 years of research done by psychologists both in Oxford and in the US, that as soon as the man finds out he is going to become a parent, the biology within him changes. His testosterone levels drop. The neural pathways in his brain completely change. He becomes more sensitive. His hearing becomes more sensitive. He becomes more sensitive and tuned into empathic needs, the physical needs of children and the environment around him. One of the things that blew my mind when I actually read this research was that they did tests where they put a family with a 2-week-old child into a setting. They recorded the sounds, the noises, the cries of the child. They sat mum and dad on a seat and they said, amongst 10 children, choose your child's cry. On every occasion, mums and dads were able to spot their own babies crying, okay? There was no default on that. Now, the interesting thing about this is, if a man is going to decide to foster children, has never fostered a child before, never had a child before, the same physical responses will happen in his body, as they will with a woman. The same with adoption. So there's a fallacy out in the world that men and women are completely different, and women are the only ones that can tune into their children's desires. That simply isn't true, okay? It is absolutely equal. The only difference between a father and a mother is that when the father, as he develops through the pregnancy, he has a heightened ability to protect. There's two separate parts of the brains that develop. In the woman, it's the middle of the brain that develops when she's pregnant. In the man, it's the frontal part of the brain, which is the fight and flight zone. So men, when we've got something that scares us, fears us, when we need to protect, it sits in that frontal part of the brain, and that's the part of the brain that develops when a man's testosterone levels drop. So that these systems within us say that we can equally parent, we can equally satisfy our children's needs. The big thing that with a woman will nurture. There's lots of benefits to being mum. There's a reason why a child, when it falls and it cries, it's upset, will go to mum first. When it wants to play rough and tumble, get wet and go out in the mud and do all those crazy things, they naturally gravitate to dad, because dad teaches children how to negotiate risk, and dad teaches children how to get over those things when they fall down. Dad teaches children courage, okay? Those two relationships are very much needed within a child's upbringing and life. Otherwise, they don't develop. They don't develop in the way that they can. So the courts don't allow for that. Law doesn't allow for that. That is unfound. There's no challenge to this biology. It's what happens. And we need to be aware that women need to be aware. Women don't understand this stuff. It's not taught to anybody. A mother is groomed into believing she's the only thing that can protect her child, that men don't know how to answer those needs the same way that she does. That simply isn't true. You know, so a woman understanding that her husband is very well equipped to look after her child's needs. You know, his body's gone through exactly the same changes that she has. And a man understanding that he needs to be present because he matters. You know, he matters and he needs to know that. So don't give up on that child. Don't think that you're not significant. Without you, they have no courage to stand up once they've fallen down. They have no courage to deal with a girlfriend that's let them down when they're 14. You know, they lose this element. This is why there are more men that are homeless. In 191 countries across the world, the suicide rates for men and boys are higher. The youngest documented case is 6 years old. There's a reason for that. There's a lack of understanding or services that know what men and boys need. And we need to bring that balance. You know, we need to get it back right where both of us are validated, both men and women, validated in our children's lives. We're both accepted as being important in that. Otherwise, our children are more likely to go into drug and alcohol, more likely to go into crime. They were more likely to fail in education. They're more likely to die early. You know, the ACEs, the adverse childhood experiences, where there's only one parent in place, means that a child's actual physical life is they're more likely to die 10 years earlier. These things are real, you know, and what Arpu and I and lots of other people are trying to do now all over the world, there's lots of women involved in standing up for men and boys. We are saying, how can we ask for these things unless we're willing to stand by our men and boys and expect the same thing for them, you know? So validating a man's role within his children's lives, understanding that without him, our children are not going to thrive, and women understanding that their dads can look after them equally the same. You don't have to fight. You don't have to be the one person to protect. You know, these men are very well equipped. Ex-husband, you can hate him till the day he dies. That's okay, but your children need him. Your children need him, and that's all there is to it. You chose him. Get over it, live with it. You might not like him now, but he's very much needed within your child's life. So suck it up, let him in the children's life and work with him. And that's kind of our message.
And
I would just like to second Sally's opinion. You know, I'm reminded of a judgment I read while I was in my university doing my LLM course. Mm-hmm. So there's this judgment. I don't remember the name of the judge right now, but there's this judgment from US Supreme Court. It was a case in 2005, I think. And the judge actually admonished both the parents. It was a family law case, so two people fighting for the custody of the child. And the judge actually admonished both of them, saying that this child represents each one's half, and then it becomes whole. which is like what Sally said about the biology, of the child and the biological changes a man and a woman go through when they become parents or when they are in the process of becoming parents. So the judge saying that there are two halves, from you to make this one. And if you say your mother is bad, you are actually saying the half that he has gotten from his mother, that half in that mother is bad, just like that half in that father is bad. If you say the father of the child is bad. So basically, when you two created a union to give rise to this child, then now that you are in this unfortunate situation where you're fighting for the custody of the child, it's like, to me, fighting for something which is not yours, because the child will become an adult and he will have his own mind, he will have his own choices in life, and he will be able to decide on his own, in his own mind, whether his mother was right or his father was right. Now, I always keep telling, and we always keep promoting this through Split the Difference, that both parents are needed. Your mother could give you nourishment, care, love, and affection that you can have from mother. Father gives you the same, but the discipline, the grooming, whatever we miss in this gender, which is a woman, that other gender is there to complement it. That is why nature created a man and a woman at first place. Now that a man and a woman give rise to a child, it becomes important for all the men out there to understand that it's not always, highlighting your relationship with your mother that you should do. Culturally as well, in India, there are so many things about mother you can talk endlessly and hear. I think I've been here in UK for last 3 years now, and it's the same here. And all my interactions with people from this part of the globe, where we are live from at the moment, also shows me the similar culture. There will be so many things around Mother's Day, around, all the things related to moms in songs, in poetry, in feelings and everything. Very, very few things regards fathers. So as men, the first step to realization of your own rights as fathers, it starts from the fact that validate yourself, just like Sally said. So if you validate yourself as fathers, that no, this is my child, I can look after my child, and I have my child's best interests in my mind, I can be in the court of law and say that I can take care of my child. So maybe the court can grant you, I would always say my clients, while I was practicing as an attorney in India, I would always say my clients that please try to not to mudsling the other party. What you want for yourself from the court, you tell about those things. And that's what I'm learning, from my experiences with Sally and Burris. She's a balanced person. She has a background in therapy. The dialogue, the narrative which Split is trying to push ahead is that we don't want to condemn women. We don't want to condemn mothers. We want nothing against anyone. All we want is equality. And we are filling the gap where, we see inequalities for men and boys. And where we see inequalities for men and boys, for example, last year, we actually started a campaign, which is a suicide prevention campaign. And as part of the launch of suicide prevention campaign, which was part of Mental Health Awareness Month, which is starting from September the 10th, and then we go to International Suicide Prevention Day, towards October 10th. So we had this 1 month long campaign in UK. And as part of that campaign, I tried looking at statistical data from World Health Organization. I was shocked beyond my imagination to find how many men in Asia, how many men in Europe and Americas commit suicide against women. And the cause, when I was asked by Sally to find out the causes were family disputes and, litigation. So what are family disputes? Parental alienation is one of them. Discord with your wife is another one. And other one could be like, if you say that men are unemployed and they can commit suicide because of their unemployment, that's not true. The biggest possible reason which WHO in itself assigns to the highest male rates of suicides or highest rate of suicides amongst men in Asia specifically is due to family discord and matrimonial disputes. So what this brings us to conclude when we think, like I can think as a human rights lawyer or as a professional just working in family court systems across the globe, all I feel and all I think is men need to validate themselves. This is more important. As far as the legal side of this is concerned, at Split the Difference, we are trying to actually push forth an agenda with the United Nations where, like, we have UN Men. You know, all the policies come from there and they come down to all the countries because we all are United Nations member countries. So we are trying to ensure that if we have support from amazing people like you and have more and more outreach to audience who can go to Split the Difference website, sign a petition, which is a petition put forth by UN, by Split the Difference to push for UN Men. If people can today go to www.split-the-difference.com and check our petition, which pushes forth to United Nations that it should give us a UN men just like we have UN women. The purpose of having this program, you know, and reaching out to all our fellow brothers and sisters in Philippines is achieved. For me, for Sally, for Split the Difference, we all want to give back to society where we see our fathers, sisters, brothers, and all those amazing men that make our lives beautiful as being, you know, served equally by the law. Because you see, it's a very personal thing for me to share on this platform, but I lost my father almost 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. And in less than a month's time is his third death anniversary that we will be remembering him at. And I do miss my father. I do miss my bond with him that nourished me to become where you see me today. So I do not say that I discredit what my mom did for me or what all ladies who are motherly figures for me, including Sally Ann, has done for me. But I do remember what my father has taught me, how I have become where I am. But then God does not take away from you anything until he wishes to replace it with, you know, something as good or even more beautiful. So here it was, I got married. I got married into an amazing family where I have a father-in-law who is just as my father was. And then I see my father's reflections in all those people whom I'm working with, whether it is Sally herself or whether there are some amazing people who just keep giving me reflections of what my father used to be like, what were his work ethics. So when, as an alienated child, I lost my father to death, but as an alienated child, when you grow in life, you can never ever reconcile with that emotional trauma where your mother fed you against your father. And there are so many children, you know, who have grown into adults and they have lived experience of parental alienation, and they definitely want to search for their fathers and speak to them. So I would encourage all men who are listening to us today, if you are in such a situation, please try to create small videos, 30-second videos, or put some things on social media so that your children know that you are also waiting for them to come back to their lives. Mm-hmm. You also want to establish that emotional connection which has been distorted due to so many reasons, first and foremost being manipulation by their mother themselves. So I would also request all the mothers, all the women, like Sally said, that no matter what you face between husband and wife, but once you decide to become parents, it's not by accident. Even if it is by accident, accept it, and do not let your child feed on the hatred that you have for your husband, that he develops that for his father, because his relationship to his father is different from what you have with him as your husband. So this is a quite technical point that I ended up making, but I hope my message is clear. So
For
thank
sure.
you for that.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. And a few things that I've actually captured earlier, let me just translate that in Filipino here. Ang sinasabi kasi dito is, ano nga ba yun? Hindi, joke lang. Ang sinasabi kasi dito is, sinasabi ni attorney Arpu here is, for fathers, para sa mga tatay, for fathers, try as much as possible or gawin mo lahat ng pwede mong gawin to get in touch with the child. Knowing that custody normally stays with the mother for 7 years, what would you do as a father in those 7 years?
Make sure you are involved.
You make sure that you are involved, because again, you don't want that your child will feel alienated kasi wala siya, or he or she doesn't have that father figure. And that's really important. Earlier, Miss Sally actually mentioned, I believe Miss Sally mentioned earlier about the biological change that's happening with men. Is also as equivalent as the biological change that's happening with women. Diba?
Yes.
Marahil ang babae, pinagdadala niya yan for 9 months, yung bata. Pero men has also biological changes happening in them na minsan hindi sila nakakatulog, yung levels ng testosterone nila nag-iiba at nagiging responsive sila.
Nagiging develop daw yung frontal lobe
Yes.
ng mga lalaki once na nalaman nila na parent na sila.
Yeah, so meaning the changes that these women normally claims are also happening. Maybe not at the same rate, probably not at the same physical, physiological change.
I would just like to add, men do not have baby bumps like we have.
Yes.
But still you can assert that you are becoming a father. So
Yes.
validate, you know what, I think the emotional difficulty with men is they are very less in their expressions. So, once men start becoming more expressive, they will become more assertive in their emotions. That's where men fail, where women succeed is where men fail. So women succeed with expression. They could be expressing what they are feeling. Men do not express it as much. So even if you don't have a baby bump, you don't have to copy your wife, but you still can be an equal participant in that process where you show your excitement about becoming a father as much as a woman is showing excitement to when she is ready to become a mother, So it's about men taking the lead in showing that I am a proud father. I am just not a care provider from backstage. I am leading my child's life from the front. So this is what men needs to be assertive about, I think. So we can add this, so that people can understand that as men, we need to be assertive. As husbands, we need to be assertive towards our wives in telling them that this is my child too. So the 7-year-old legislation, I would just like to mention there is a international convention which protects and safeguards the rights of the child, which is called the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child. Till date, it is one of the most ratified and signed piece of legislation all over the globe. But still, the Article 1 of this convention says that any person who is below the age of 18 years, is considered a child. But different countries have different ages of majority. So in Philippines, when it comes to family and custodial battles, they consider the 7 years bar, and any child who is more than 7 years old can actually tell the court through the process of judicial interview in Philippines that he or she wants to be with his mother or father. Now the point is, when this is put into practice, this is a family code provision under, I think, sections 213, that, a child can tell about his preference of the parent he or she wants to stay with under Philippine law. So I think all the attorneys, that are representing men, they must be able to create an environment for a child's voice to to be heard in the court in the manner that the other party's counsel, which is the mother's counsel, he doesn't try to break into the law in a way proving that the man is incapable just because the law by default guarantees that the child could stay with his mother and it is in his best interest. So what a man can do is establish a contact between himself and the child by using all the things that he has access to, starting with social media and all other aspects, that are open to him to reach out to his child. Because sometimes, what I can tell you about Philippine law for sure is it says that under the family code that, the situation where the custody of the child has to be decided, it's an ongoing situation. So it depends on the circumstances. So Philippine men can, of course, file an application in the court when the case has been decided. Even after that, you can still file, if there are changes in the circumstances, you can still file an application in the court presenting your side of the story that now these circumstances have changed. My child really wants to live with me. So then you have become the voice of the child, but this process is very complicated, because generally men are not aware that they can do this, but there is a way of doing it. You can have an attorney do that for you or seek court's help that you want to put this application in case you have any direct evidence showing that your child wants to be with you. Because generally children do not have rights to go to courts themselves and have their voices heard. So that's the problem where we fail our children. That's the problem where men fail themselves as fathers. But there is a provision under law. Law is never as it is. Law is how we use it, how we practice it. That is what law is. And law and justice, they are not same either. I keep repeating that law is different, justice is different. Law is different in theory, it's totally different in practice. So men should be mindful of all these dimensions of law while they are in these disillusional custodial battles
For sure.
their children and
and we would actually really agree with those kinds of things because not because you place someone in you put justice into something doesn't mean that the law would also sometimes law would normally contradict with the justice needed in terms of the situation, and we've actually learned so much. In terms of men's rights and alienation, parental alienation, which primarily just all boils down to kids being the victims here of such situation.
It really affects the child.
Really affects the child, and for sure, Filipinos also have learned so much about, I think I have to learn more about my laws, my rights as a man, in terms of this kind of custody battle, in terms of your annulment or your struggles with your marriage, It's just that, I'm really happy that Miss Sally and Attorney Arpu has actually joined us for this evening. It's just that we only have like an hour to discuss it, and it's really unfortunate that we have to cut it short. But probably Miss Sally and Miss Arpu, I could ask just a few probably just a few lines, last thing that you want to say to our Filipino viewers here, probably for those who are also watching there in the UK. Let's start with you, Miss Sally. I'm sorry, Miss Sally, I think you're just on mute.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
There.
We believe that women don't understand some of the stuff that we understand. And we believe that women have hearts as big as a room. They have the capability to be balanced, and to be able to hold an environment when there's a lot of contention and arguments in there. I think we believe also that women just don't know this information about what it means to be a dad. And the only people that can give that to them is dads. And if your show can help to grow that knowledge, then that's amazing. We would like to know your opinions. We'd really like you to attach to us on our social media and just share what you think. sometimes we talk a lot about men and boys because we feel very passionate about them, and we feel passionate about women understanding them, you know. So, but hearing your opinion is really important to us. So we're sorry we've talked a great deal today. I personally wanted to ask you a lot what you thought about this, because we were looking forward to speaking to all of you, three of you in the studio. So it's unfortunate we haven't had a chance to listen to you, but maybe another time. So thank you for inviting me.
Yes.
For sure. And probably, yes, we would most likely try to invite you again probably sometime to know more, about this things that we could talk about. And because this is just an extensive topic, really, and it cannot just be fit in an hour, But how about you, Attorney Arpu? Just probably a few lines or a few words for our viewers.
Well, my parting words for today will be that rights are all about choices, and rights are also what we assert them to be. So I would suggest and sincerely advise all men and women out there to evaluate in themselves whether their assertion of rights is leading us to setting up healthy families, having healthy marriages, having healthy children. So law is what we make it to be, like I have said. So it's important for all those men to assert their own rights and their own identity as fathers, as husbands, as brothers, or as sons. And it's important for women to be flexible and receptive, to understand that men and women are supposed to complement each other. They are not supposed to be antagonistic towards each other. God created us as we are, and there must be a purpose in Creator's mind. So it's high time we realize that gender battles will leave us nowhere. It's wholesome life, it's love, it's peace and prosperity we all want as human beings. So today is, beginning of the holy month of Ramadan. Today in India, it's beginning of New Year. Hindu New Year. So it's nothing to do with religion, but we have so many good things in our culture, religion, in our lives that we must learn to exist peacefully. If we keep fighting these battles against genders, whether against men, whether against women, they are not going to lead us to a healthy generation ahead of us. So live with peace. We only have one life, and rights are all about choices. These are my parting words.
Thank you. And it's very true. I mean, I fully agree with everything that Miss Arpu has actually said earlier, And again, I thank Miss Sally and Attorney Arpu for joining us this evening. For sure, we will be inviting you again here at the show so that we could discuss further, everything that we would like to know more about parental alienation and, what Split the Difference UK really is, How about you, Ate Jari? Any last or parting words that you have for our viewers?
I think it's about maintaining positivity, to one another as a parent. Also, maintain positive and loving relationship to the child, because the child should feel the safetyness and the safety and also the stability of their lives. Also, like the impact of the parenting, of the good parenting of both parties. So I think, it boils down to love, as what Attorney Arpu had mentioned.
Okay. Thank you, Ate Jari. And for me, regarding parental alienation, it's really important. No matter what happens, I mean, you guys may bicker at each other. Pwede kayo magtalo kung gusto nyo. But at the end of each day, you cannot deny the fact that this kid will be your legacy sooner or later. So you might want to make sure and make sure that what you are feeding, what you are actually giving your child is something really important for his growth or her growth in the future. And yun nga, sabi ko, in Filipino, kahit magtalo kayo, mag-away kayo, kung ano man ang gusto nyo, sa huli pa rin ang importante yung bata. Kung ano yung iniiwan nyo sa kanya, yun yung magiging siya paglaki niya. Yes. And for you, Ate Sophie?
Yes, this is for all the parent that is going through having parent custody of the children. If you do have hatred to your partner, just set it aside. Do not involve your children, okay? And do not brainwash them and weaponize them against the other parent or to hate them. And especially like what Attorney Arpu said, life is all about choices. So be careful. It is very crucial decision for you to choose your partner, because your partner will be the one who will be with you in raising your children and of course influence them. There are a lot of lessons that you might be able to teach your child, but also your father. The father is as much as important to be there.
And the children cannot choose their parents, but you can choose your partner.
Yes. And men, father, and sons matter.
Yes. And because of that, we have an announcement.
Again, antabayanan bukas, araw ng Linggo, Abril 3, ang muling pagsasahimpapawid ng himpilang may todong lakas, DWIZ 882, sa pagpapatuloy ng Pilipinas Debates 2022. Kapartner ang COMELEC, Vote Pilipinas at CNN Philippines. Panibagong bugso ng paglalatag ng mga reforma, pagtugon sa mga malalaking usapin at pakikipagpalitan ng mga opinyon at saloobin hinggil sa mga pambansang issue. Tutukan muli mula mismo sa mga tumatakbong pangulo ng bansa. Abangan, Pilipinas Debates 2022, The Turning Point. Bukas, Linggo, Abril 3, simula alas 7 ng gabi, makakasama natin si Drew Nasino, gayon din sina DWIZ reporters Jopel Peleño at Tina Nolasco at buong puwersa ng DWIZ. Pilipinas Debates 2022, The Turning Point. Live sa himpilang may todong lakas. DWIZ 882 at mga kapatid ng himpilang DWIZ at home radio sa iba't ibang panig ng bansa.
Yon, maraming salamat. And again, thank you so much for the legal head of Split the Difference UK, Attorney Arpu Kumar, and of course the CEO of Split the Difference UK, Miss Sally Ann Burris. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon or ngayong gabing to this evening in the Philippines. Thank you so much. I hope you guys are doing really good there in the UK. And thank you for your service. Actually, it really means a lot for a family and men and women as well, especially for the child, whatever you're doing. Keep doing a good job.
I have a request. If you could please ask our lovely audience to check our website once and help us signing that petition, because we need massive support for this massive task of, establishing UN men on lines of UN women, so that men and women have equal rights, equal choices in all the services, and law becomes even for both the genders. So I encourage all of you to visit our website.
Yeah, we think you are amazing. We love your show. We really think you're amazing. So thank you for inviting us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
For inviting us.
And I think the website of the petition is split-the-difference.com. Yes, visit that and you sign the petition.
Yes, for sure. And that would really help them a lot with their advocation. Thank you so much, guys. And just always remember, the Love Lines, Voice of the Heart, ay inihahatid sa inyo ng DWIZ 882 at ng Creative Voices Productions. Sa pakikipagtulungan niya ng Certified Voice Artist Program, Voice Acting Academy Philippines, Meta Voices Talent and Casting Agency, Dubbing Booth Company, at ng Creative Sound Studios at ng Voice of the Youth Network. Of course, sa pangalan niya na nag-iisang Voice Master ng Pilipinas, walang iba kundi si Sir Pocholo de Leon Gonzalez. Muli ako ang inyong voice friend, Kuya RV.
Happy birthday!
Thank you so much. Yes, thank you so much. And kasama ko on studio, sina
Ate Sophie
At Ate Jari.
Maraming salamat, guys, and see you again next Saturday dito lang sa Love Lines, Voice of the Heart. Ikaw, anong hugot mo sa buhay? Thank you, guys. Happy Saturday. Good evening.
DWIZ 8